Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Straight Talk. Our guest is the chairman of the Energy Advisory Committee, Mr. Jimmy Kwok. Mr. Kwok is a chemist, industrialist, and the managing director of Rambo Chemicals. He also chairs several other government committees, including being the honorary president of the Federation of the Hong Kong Industries, as well as the Federation of Innovative Technologies and Manufacturing Industries. We have invited Mr. Kwok to talk to us about our energy supply in Hong Kong, and we will ask him if Hong Kong citizens are getting value for money. Welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you for inviting me here.
Right. Jimmy, I want to ask you, for many people, we don't have a sort of a clear view of the energy scene in Hong Kong. Maybe can you tell us very briefly a snapshot of the energy scene in Hong Kong? Apart from the electricity, what else do we have?
And normally we have the local power generation plant in Hong Kong, one in GLP, another in HEC, the Hong Kong Electric. And that two power company has a under scheme of control and signed by the government, and they have to generate the electricity in the power generation plant. Normally we will have the fuel mix about 50% by the natural gases, and 45% by 45% from the coal and also the nuclear energy. Right. Nuclear energy may be in about 25%.
Right. Would you say that Hong Kong's energy supply is quite reliable in general?
Certainly. If you just compare that figures all over the world, Hong Kong still maintain 99.99% stability. It's very high reliability of the energy supply in the world. If you compare with other international cities.
You know, for most Hong Kong people, in a way, we are very fortunate. So we take things for granted, saying that, I mean, we never worry about we don't have any electricity. So, I mean, from your point of view, I mean, you are in that field. Why is it so important that we have such a reliable and predictable energy supply?
If you see Hong Kong as an international financial center, about 50% of the people are living and working also in over 15 floors in the city. Right. So if that in energy supply and the stability of supply is very, very important.
Right. So what you're saying is, if many people living over 15th floor, I believe, that if you don't have electricity, we just can't walk up and down.
Yes.
I mean, it's very inefficient, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. And also, you also mentioned about the fuel mix. You said about 60% are from coal and some other from nuclear energy and maybe natural gas, and then coal and energy. Why do we have to have a different energy mix? Why can't we just rely on one energy source?
The fuel mix is, before the fuel mix more is in 2005, it's about 50% by coal. And now reduced to minimize to 25%, and hopefully over 50% by natural gases. But all the natural gases are now importing.
I see.
and very high cost in the transportations. Now government has built with the two power company in the LG, we call the liquefied natural gas stations. It will be commenced to use about this year, maybe in the middle of September. So that would have a very stable price of the natural gases. You can open tender to get the contract from overseas, and so you have a high bargaining power. If you have like we call the LMG terminal,
Right, so that means if you have a different energy mix, you've got better control on our costs as well, isn't it?
And also better control, and because one got shut down, then got delivery problem, you can another could be replaced.
Yeah, I think you also mentioned about nuclear power, nuclear energy. You know, we have a Daya Bay. Recently, we had a sort of nuclear exercise just in case Hong Kong have a nuclear accident. It was quite well covered. Are people worried about nuclear energy, in your view?
As far as I know, very clear from all the experts in the world, the nuclear energy is safe. Of course, it's a green get green energy. We call it carbon-free energy. And also the prices are very stable. And if you don't rely on the, we call it nuclear energy, you have a very high risk on the price fluctuations like last year's.
Right. Since you mentioned that, we had Mrs. Betty Yuen, the Vice Chair of COP, on a show in October, and she told us that although our energy supply will not be affected due to the energy crisis happening over the world like Ukraine, but they said because we just can't escape from the energy costs because we are tied to international fuel prices. So she's totally right. The tariff went up to about 20% by COP, and the Hong Kong Electric 45% in November, and subsequently another 5% 3 months later. So, sorry to have to ask from the viewer's point of view, do you think Hong Kong people are getting value for money?
If you compare with the price the people getting from other power company in the world, Hong Kong, the price tariff is still very stable, and it was under the control of a scheme of control agreement that you have a long planning on the supply, and also you have long planning on the price. So it will be more stable than the other cities.
I mean, we read in the news that in Europe, I mean, the costs have skyrocketed as well.
Yes.
How about our energy supply compared to the mainland cities like Shenzhen and Shanghai? How do we compare to our neighboring cities?
You cannot compare with the charges of electricity from mainland because the residential area got heavy subsidies from the government.
Right.
But the industrial or the commercial electricity costs are a lot higher than the residential area. So we can't make any comparison at all. But I believe if we can have the import from the nuclear energy source in mainland, that would be a very stable price strategies for Hong Kong in the future.
Right, so you mentioned about Europe that has the hardest hit, and then the mainland city we can't really compare because they have subsidies. How about other cities like Singapore and Tokyo?
We can compare with that international city. Hong Kong is always staying at a very lower than other international cities in compare with the price of the energy. Only Singapore has, in recent 2 years, lower than Hong Kong. All others is over 50% or even 100% more than Hong Kong.
So that's encouraging. So let's talk about some recent mishap that happened on the news. I'm sure many people read the news and they see some issue with the electricity supply. And actually, I think Mrs. Betty Yuen actually said that, say for CLP customers, they expect only on average about 5.7 minutes unplanned power outage per year. But last year, there was a Yuen Long cable bridge that we saw a 2-day blackout period. And so far this year, we have another 2 incidents. Like recently in March, we have over 1,000 people trapped in lifts across Kowloon and New Territories. And a few weeks ago, there's another power outage incident with Hong Kong Island. So can you give us an account what has happened? Why all of a sudden in the last 12 months, with all these things happening, suddenly, because you hardly hear about the news on electricity supply, and now you have the bridge, and then you have lifts, and then you have another one in Hong Kong Island. Why?
I think that is something because in the Yuen Long, it's very clear it's due to the fire and accidentally get in, but it might be uncontrollable. But in the May, the Hong Kong Electrics, according to the news, that would arising from uncontrollable issues.
Right.
Because of they claim that unfortunately mismatched with the cables and caused the fire and get the incidents.
Which shouldn't happen.
It shouldn't happen because it's controllable. Yeah. Of course, what it happened, it happened. But still, if you bring on why it's a controllable, why you can't make it safer than before. And now I believe that government should have an interim review, particularly on this kind of incidents and how to get better ready and by more inspections and safety factors.
Yes. Jimmy, you being the chairman of the Energy Advisory Committee with the government. So how would you address all these issues? I mean, what will your committee do to help Hong Kong have better energy for our citizens? What will your committee do?
We will soon have a committee meeting. We definitely will put on the agenda and have a closer look on why it happens, and we will make some recommendations to governments.
Right, okay, let's take a break now, and please stay with us. We will be right back. Thank you for staying with us. We have been talking with Mr. Jimmy Kwok about the energy supply in Hong Kong, where the residents here are getting value for money, and how it compares to the situation on the mainland and overseas as well. And Mr. Kwok gave us a brief account of some of the mishaps, and in that context, we're going to talk about the regulatory framework for energy supply we have in Hong Kong. So, Chairman, we have touched on numerous issues in such a short time, and thank you very much. I think the viewers would appreciate now they have an overall view. So let's talk about what we call the SCA, the Scheme of Control Agreement, that's between the government and the two power companies. Can you give the viewers some salient points on this agreement and tell us why this is in place in the first place?
The Scheme of Control Agreement is very important because government can give a long-term investment planning to the two power company to get future ready for Hong Kong electricity growth. Without such, it's difficult to find the investors into the long-term investment, particularly on the power generation plant.
You mentioned the two companies. Will you call that kind of a monopoly in Hong Kong?
It's kind of monopolized in businesses, but in a way, if you got a high quality of service, reliable electricity supply, it's going to give betterment to the society.
Right, okay. And you mentioned about we talked about the SCA, we talked about the pros and the cons, and you said we can make better plans. So what are because everything has two sides, right?
Yeah.
So the pros is we can make better development. The investors, they know what to do, what to expect. I know that there's an 8% guaranteed return. Is that a high return?
But today, it's not high return because the interest rate already hit up to 7%.
Right.
So in the long run, 8% is relatively at the highest rate, but it all depends on the cycle of the economy. Today, yes or no, and maybe tomorrow, no or yes. So it's reasonable. Would maybe okay. The last Scheme of Control Agreement was signed on the 15 years ago. At that moment, this Scheme of Control Agreement has 10%.
Right.
Return on investments, and today we have only 8%. I think that is gradually and slowing down. Hopefully, we could have the next Scheme on Control Agreement signed by the government with the two power company in year 2035. Maybe that would further down.
Right, because I saw that the recent agreement was signed in 2018. And it's going to be 2035, and this upcoming, the first 5 years review, will say this year.
Yes, this year. Yeah.
I mean, definitely we need people to invest. I mean, 8% sounds like a good number, but if the interest rate keep on going up like 9 or 10%, that becomes not a good investment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, does other countries have similar agreement to ensure the investors will invest into such infrastructure investments?
I think they should have some, but definitely it's not the same as Hong Kong, because Hong Kong has a long stories, over 100 years histories with the two power company in Hong Kong. But right. The other company, the other city may not have the same company owner are the same.
Right. And I understand under the SCA, they've also have an incentive and also a penalty mechanism so that I think the rationale is want to encourage the power company to do well. Can you tell the viewers, do you agree with this mechanism? And should this keep going on?
Okay, this incentive and the penalty normally is to encourage the business partner to do better, to control better. But if the control of the power supply company, if there's a controllable but you get failure, even you can make it restoration within the limit, and then you can get the incentive, which is not reasonable.
Right, Chairman, I think you're referring to that, saying that the two companies will receive a 0.15% additional return if the power is restored within 65 minutes on average. I know that it's sort of an over 1 year period, 65 minutes. And you know, I think you just talked about the blackout on the 19th of April on Hong Kong Island that was caused by a short circuit that you just mentioned. And people are saying that it's within 65 minutes. It's a controllable mistake, but they still have a sort of a, I won't say they should be having a penalty, but they should be having an incentive. So is that fair?
If under the scheme of control agreement cited on the documents, it's over 1 year term to consider the calculation for the incentive. I'm sure with the latest interim review, government should have a good talk with the two power companies.
So hopefully there'll be no more mistakes so they can actually have this incentive, right?
Yeah, they have to get only for the restoration time is not enough. Maybe you could see that the influence with the 2 watt scale is too big, and you cannot compare with just a sudden few minutes or an hour or 2 for one building. It's totally different.
Maybe I can suggest, apart from looking at time restoration, look at the nature of the mishap.
Sure.
If it was sort of an accident, just like some fuse blown like over fluorescent tube that you can't control, compared to a sort of man-made mistake, there's something different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. I know the Secretary for Environment said in December the government actually will consider opening up the electricity market to more competition to stabilize price. What are your thoughts on that?
If we could have more competition from the mainland on the power supply sources, that would be very sensible because you will create a competition. But again, it fully depends on the scheme of control agreement signed by the two power companies. Before the 2035, we can't do anything. But of course, if two power companies had so agreed to the government, then we can proceed immediately.
Right, I see. So, I mean, just like a television station, sometimes if you have like the third or fourth television station in Hong Kong, they may not have necessarily saving costs. So do you think that may not be the best analogy. So do you think that having, say, another power player, would it improve the cost and service to our residents?
But Hong Kong is lack of land. You would want to build another power station, definitely it's not sensible.
Right.
And also the power grid is owned by the two power companies individually. Mm-hmm. You have to share with the grid, but you can't open the grid to other competitors, so it won't be sustained.
Right. Some legislators actually said that both power companies should be more transparent on how they procure their fuel. They say that if their fuel costs are 100% reimbursable, they have no incentive to source cheaper fuels. Do you agree?
In fact, the SCA has limited the two power companies to have a full transparency about the cost of the fuel, the source, and all the financial information should make it publicly by e-copy. So maybe I believe the two power companies should do more on the PR and then let the public knowing, and that is a high transparency as set by the SCA.
Right. So, Chairman, I think any discussion about energy is never complete without addressing carbon neutrality. Hong Kong target was set by the previous government say at 2050. And we had the CEO of CLP again, Richard Lancaster, on our show 2 years ago. And he said in Hong Kong, the electricity generation is responsible for nearly 2/3 of our CO2 emission. So do you think our electricity going to be decarbonized in time from your view?
It's getting better, but if you want to get even better than before, you have to think about how to use more natural gases and the power generation plant. Again, it will be very costly. So in the long run, everybody think that it should have stability of the price of the electricity. It's no way to avoid to get the import of the electricity supply from the mainland.
Right. Another area we talk about is renewable energy, although it makes up a very small part of the fuel mix. What are some of the challenges if we're going to increase such renewable energy, from your point of view?
It's very challenging. If you, as government had policy adjusted on before the year 2035, we will have 10% of renewable energy in the fuel mix. Very challenging.
I think we're talking about wind and solar energy, isn't it?
Wind and of course, because 2 years ago, the solar panel on the roof, supported by the government policy, and also got the price that's very reasonable to get a return on the investment within 7 to 10 years, and everybody go to install the solar energy on the roof. All in all, we have only 0.1 or 0.2% of the renewable energy increased.
Right. So, right. Last question: is going green going to cost Hong Kong people more in the long run? Simple answer.
Yes. Certainly, the green energy is our future.
Right. Okay. Good. So, thank you, Mr. Kwok, for showing us that relative to many overseas countries at the moment, Hong Kong residents are indeed getting value for money energy supply. That also gives us a good basis to work towards achieving our target of carbon neutrality before 2050, fulfilling our role as good international citizens. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in, and we will see you next time.